Caroline Carney here at Powell Arts with Darlene Foster, who is one of the artists who will be in our juried show, which is here from March 17th through the end of May. Darlene, would you mind introducing us to your piece?
Certainly. This is called The Beguiled. My work currently is in photography montage. What I do is I travel all over the tri-state area, basically, taking photographs of anything that interests me, and then I composite them, usually in Photoshop, digitally, into whatever I had in mind.
So it's so interesting because you said in your art statement that you are a collector by nature, and I was telling you earlier that my mom and I saw that and we were like, I love this because she's found objects, so she's not collecting digital imagery or like photo imagery, but she's always collecting little bits of everything.
Yes, especially vintage photographs of figures. I love to use them.
So, which is such an interesting. I think it's a very unique perspective, and like the way that you use the older tones that we would see in vintage photographs speaks very, very well in this too. So, of this, I'm guessing this is vintage, and then some of these aspects are from actual nature. Like, how do you curate that?
Yeah. I usually, it depends on what comes to my mind. Sometimes it will start with a vintage figure, and I look for something that I really want to use that figure in.
Okay.
One of my images that I've taken. Other times it will be the background image, and then that will spark some sort of direction to go in. This particular piece was inspired by, started off with an illustration by Gustave Doré.
Okay.
And it was called Rabbits Going into the Woods.
Okay. Yeah.
And hiding in the bushes was a man with a shotgun scaring the rabbits, and they were taking off into the woods. And the other part of it is inspired by the Pied Piper of Hamelin.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I can totally see that. Yeah.
Instead of leading in the Pied Piper of Hamelin, he was hired to lead the rats out of the village. And when they did not pay him for his work, he led all the children out of the village. So my piper is not a piper, but a violinist. And she has beguiled the rabbits and to come off into the woods, and maybe the crows also. But that's where my story ends, and then I like for the viewer to go further with it and decide what happens to the beguiled rabbits.
I love that. It's like a create your own adventure in that way. So, have you always done work that how did you come to this? Because it's very very unique.
I'll try to make it a short story. I worked for a photography studio for 14 years, and I was doing retouching with brushes and dye. Directly on the photographs. When digital came along in the early 90s, I was able to learn it on the job for my retouching. And I used to have a dark room in my basement, and I loved compositing negatives together to make different combinations. And so when I had learned digital, I found that I could much easier
because
do the composites.
There's no destructive techniques. They're not quite like I'm a musician, and you start out working on tapes, and when you were doing destructive edits, you were really doing destructive edits. Whereas now destructive is kind of loose because you can have a copy.
I can do exactly what I wanted to in the dark room. Much easier. And I can make it exactly the way I wanted it.
Yeah, it gives great control. Technology is a blessing and a curse, but in this case, a blessing. So I love the texture that you created throughout the sky, and I'm curious, how do you how did you?
I actually take a lot of my textures. Besides my basement floor is concrete, and I've got a lot of textures there. But my favorites are to go online and get the old daguerreotypes.
Oh yeah.
And you can download those, and they're free.
Yeah,
no,
because there's no one's.
Yes.
As a singer, I do the same thing, but
Yeah.
with music.
And the more damaged they are, the better, because the textures are wonderful.
Yeah.
And then whatever old figures are left in them,
Mhm.
I take them out, Photoshop and leave the texture. And then I put it on top. And use, the different settings in Photoshop to blend it in.
I think it's so like funny that like when we talk about like creation in terms of like I would even say like mass creation of things, we focus on newer, like more consistent, but like things tend to be smooth or we eradicate anything that is distinctive about it. When a lot of times when you're looking at art or photographs or the things that we find most valuable, they have a variety of textures that can only happen with time.
Yes.
And so like, and I think that artists in particular, whether you're a visual artist or a sound designer or something like that, those are the things that kind of like fascinate us.
Yeah.
And you've done that so beautifully here in taking something old and making it new. And it's almost like an assemblage, but with photographs.
Yes.
So we hope that you'll come see Darlene's work at our juried show from March 17th through the end of May. Thank you so much.